Hello, and welcome to What the Fun Facts with Lily. I'm your host, Lily, and I'm not an expert on anything. Get ready for some of that good info for you to impress that person you like. You know, that one. Anyway, let's get this show on the road. Hello! This episode is going to be a little different. First of all, it's about Harry Potter, but I don't actually know a whole lot about Harry Potter. I know the basics, watched the movies, read most of the books. I apologize about that. But this episode is kind of special. I have a guest here.
Hi, I'm Cal Zafron. I'm your local Harry Potter enthusiast. I'm also a proud Ravenclaw. Lily, what is your house? What are you?
I'm a Hufflepuff.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I feel kind of attacked by that because most people say that Hufflepuff sucks.
Well, there's a reason they say that, and we'll get into that later in the episode.
So, as you can see, this episode is going to work a little bit differently. It's going to be a little bit more conversational, a little bit more ad-lib, but I hope it'll still be fun. Anyway, let's get into this.
Okay, so we all love Harry Potter, am I right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Yes, of course. Well, I'm here today to tell you that you are wrong. Harry Potter actually sucks.
What?
Okay, it doesn't suck. It's still very good, but there are a lot of issues with it. So today, we will be focusing on all the issues in Harry Potter. We'll be talking about all the in-universe reasons why Harry Potter is not good. And then we will also dive into some of the realistic reasons, and we will get into a little bit of the J.K. Rowling stuff today.
Oof.
Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into it.
So I know from your wonderful speech that I heard, sophomore year?
Yes, sophomore year.
Yes, I remember you saying that Hogwarts is actually a really bad school.
Yes, it is, and I'll tell you exactly why. At a school, the primary reason you go to a school is to get educated, right?
Yes.
A lot of people also say that you go to school in order to prepare you for a job outside of school. Now, Harry Potter has some classes that do prepare you for careers. They have potions, they have defense against the dark arts, they have herbology. They have some of these classes that prepare you for some wizarding careers. However, they fail to teach the students any real-life skills. They don't teach any math or science, which would come in really handy for potions, because if they're like, you need 4 quarts of something here or there.
Yeah, they don't teach dimensional analysis.
They don't teach them anything like that. And the one thing that I find really bad is a lot of the students who graduate from Hogwarts go on to work in the Ministry of Magic, which we will talk about later. They don't give any classes that prepare you for a ministry government type job. There's no political science, there's no civics and government, there's nothing. They just drop them into the government and expect them to know how it works. And that's an issue. Now, that's the first reason I have here as to why Hogwarts is a bad school, but there's plenty more. Take a guess at what the next reason might be.
Well, I do remember a big thing in the first book was that there was a troll in the women's bathroom.
That is correct. In the first book, there's a troll in the bathroom. There's a giant, ravenous, 3-headed dog. There are moving stairways, and that's just in the first book. There are so many safety hazards around Hogwarts. They have so many dangerous creatures, magical items, that make the campus a very unsafe place. So, for example, they have a forbidden forest right next to the school. That forbidden forest has centaurs, it has giant spiders, it has lots of dangerous creatures. There's also, I don't know if you've read Chamber of Secrets, there's a basilisk literally roaming the school inside the pipes.
Yes.
That is bad. That's very bad. Now, in the third book, Prisoner of Azkaban, they literally have Dementors roaming the school grounds. The Dementors are used to torture prisoners in Azkaban. That is not a good environment for a school. Now, I know before we started, we talked a little bit about the moving staircases, and you had an interesting comment about those.
Yeah, I said they were an OSHA violation.
Yes. Going around Hogwarts, there would probably be so many OSHA violations in that school. There's an entire room, the Room of Requirement, which I'm sure breaks OSHA regulations somehow, because it exists but also doesn't exist at some points.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure temporal anomalies.
There's secret pathways all throughout the school. There's the Chamber of Secrets, of course, which is hidden in the bathroom. So many OSHA violations, so many unsafe aspects to the school. Now, a more interesting, social analysis of the school is how it promotes segregation between the houses. So, for example, if you go to college, you're exposed to, a diverse group of people, lots of different viewpoints. That doesn't really happen in Hogwarts. I believe you go there when you're 11 years old, is that correct?
11, 12?
Yeah, when you're very young. And the first year that you're there, the Sorting Hat sorts you into a house of people who have a similar defining trait that you do. That essentially is the premise of most, YA dystopian novels. Think your Hunger Games, your Divergent series, and it's portrayed as very bad. But in Harry Potter, it's yay, great, the 4 houses. They put you into this group where that's your main social group. You don't get to expose yourself and talk to people in other groups very often. That's almost like cultish behavior. Let's talk about the House Cup for a second. So the House Cup, we all know what that is. It's the professors giving out points to good students throughout the year. It seems like a good concept, except for the fact that at the end of the year, all the rules seem to go out of the window. The headmaster is extremely biased and favors one of these groups very strongly.
Gosh, I wonder who he favors.
Yeah, guess what group? Definitely not Slytherin. In fact, I believe they won the House Cup the first year.
Yeah, and then...
Until Dumbledore stacks 250 points for Gryffindor. Extremely biased. I think we should also talk about Dumbledore at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is not a good dude.
He's kind of not a good school leader.
No. And one of the things that he does poorly is his hiring policies of teachers. Now, Hogwarts has an intense, mix of teachers. Some good, some bad. I would ask you, what's your favorite professor?
Well, I don't really remember a whole lot of the professors, but I remember Professor Sprout being kind of cool.
Yes, Professor Sprout is one of the good ones. But what I want to talk about is the terrible turnover rate for professors. The 7 books follow 7 years, and in every single year, there's a new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Let's look at the hiring policy that Dumbledore has. Are any of these teachers good teachers?
No.
Maybe one. There's one good professor. In the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, we have Professor Quirrell. Professor Quirrell seems like a decent guy. He's a little nervous, but he just happens to be possessed by Voldemort. That should not be a professor in the school.
You think they would have caught that during the orientation?
Yeah, you'd think Dumbledore would be able to tell, but no. Next year, they have Gilderoy Lockhart. At first, seems like a great professor. However...
A style icon.
Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile, I believe 5 times in a row. But you quickly find out that he is a fraud. He can't do anything. He knows one charm, he knows the memory charm, and that's it. He's a terrible professor. I wonder how Dumbledore looked at him and was like, yes, this is the man to teach my students. The 3rd year, this is the only good Defense Against the Dark Arts professor they ever had. This is Remus Lupin.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic, except he is a werewolf teaching children. That is not a good setup. He's a great guy, but having a little werewolf teach your children?
Yeah, and the way werewolves work in the Harry Potter universe, they don't really have any control, do they?
No, not at all. Not at all. He is one of the best professors they ever had.
The werewolf is the good one.
Yes. So next year, they have a professor, or they're supposed to have the professor Mad-Eye Moody. Except we find out at the end that it's not Mad-Eye Moody. It is the Death Eater Barty Crouch Jr. dressing up as Moody to teach the students. This year's interesting because he teaches all the students the 3 unforgivable curses.
Oh, yeah!
He performs these curses on his students in the class. That should get him fired.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the next year, he hires Dolores Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge is probably the worst villain in the entire series. She abuses her students, she's very manipulative, and she's just a horrible person overall.
She makes it a toxic workplace environment.
Exactly. Next year, they get Severus Snape to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts. He is an ex-Death Eater, and he abuses his students so badly that he is Neville Longbottom's worst fear. Imagine that. Imagine having a professor be your worst fear. Imagine you go to nursing class every day, and the person who teaches it is your worst fear.
I don't know. I have one professor who's very scary. I wouldn't say she's my worst fear.
Yeah. Now imagine if that professor was an ex-Nazi, and that would basically be Snape. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of disagreement about Snape. Some people say he's a great guy, he's just, he's doing the right thing, like he's a good person. Other people, like me, say he is a horrible individual. And the reason I have for this is we all know that he had a crush on Harry's mom when she was at Hogwarts, right? He did not like Harry's dad. When Harry goes to school, he looks exactly like his dad. Therefore, Snape abuses him. If Harry was a girl and looked exactly like his mom, Snape would have a crush on her.
Why would you bring that up?
Because I want to prove that Snape is a terrible person.
Yeah, the whole targeting Harry, because it's like he can't control that his parents were in love.
Exactly. And in the last year of school, Harry is not present for this last year, but there are 2 Death Eaters that take over the role of Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. So, that's the horrible hiring policy of Hogwarts. We've gone over how there's segregation, there's terrible hiring policies, it's not safe. But one interesting thing, or I just thought about this recently, is that every student is equipped with a dangerous weapon at all times. That is like if every student carried a gun around your college campus.
It's worse than a gun. It's a magical gun.
Yeah, because it can do so much more than a gun can do.
It can do so much more harm.
Yeah. There are at least 5 instances, just in the books, of our main characters using wands to inflict damage on other people at the school. That's only the stuff we know about. I'm sure there's plenty more going on. And that kind of ties back into the theme of safety and how Hogwarts is not a safe place at all.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't feel very safe if there was a bunch of 13-year-olds carrying around weapons of mass destruction everywhere they went.
And if you think about it, once in almost every single book, Hogwarts is attacked by something. That is a 100% rate. Every year it's attacked by something, at least while Harry is there. That is not a place I'd like to go to school.
I personally wouldn't hang out around Harry because everything bad seems to happen around him.
Okay, so we've kind of covered Hogwarts and why it's a terrible place. Now, the next topic we have is the Ministry of Magic. What do you know about the Ministry of Magic?
I know that they're kind of like the government, but I don't think they do a whole lot.
Well, you'd be surprised. They do a lot of stuff behind the scenes.
Oh.
And I'll tell you about a little bit of it. So, if you remember in Harry Potter, there's a rule that underage wizards cannot perform magic. Do you remember that rule?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
outside of Hogwarts.
Yes, yeah. So the Ministry of Magic has some sort of governmental surveillance on underage minors. That, in almost any first world democracy, that would be seen as a huge invasion of privacy. But for some reason, that's just what they do. Nextly, they have a lot of state censorship over the freedom of speech. So I don't know if you remember the main newspaper in Harry Potter, the Daily Prophet.
Yeah.
So the Daily Prophet is the primary news source of the wizarding world. However, we see through multiple occasions that the Ministry of Magic has control over what the Daily Prophet publishes.
Oh, kind of like North Korea.
Yeah, we could say that. So, for example, when Sirius Black escapes, the Ministry of Magic reaches their little hands into the newspaper and puts him over everything in the newspaper. And then the next thing, which is more problematic, is when we get news of Voldemort's return in the Goblet of Fire. In the next book, the Ministry of Magic censors the newspaper. They say, we don't want that getting out. And they cut all reference of Voldemort from their newspaper. There's no other real newspaper in the wizarding world besides the Quibbler. Now, the Quibbler is seen as like the joke newspaper. When Voldemort's return it first happens, the Quibbler is the one who publishes that. However, the Quibbler is then quickly banned from Hogwarts. Now, the Ministry also reaches their hands into what is taught at Hogwarts, especially in the 5th year. They do this through Dolores Umbridge, and her educational decrees.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember those.
No, yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, very bad, very bad. That's like, once the government reaches their hands into education and like what the students learn, that's a little problematic. Now, I'd like to talk about democracy and accountability within the Ministry of Magic. There's none.
There's none.
Wizards do get the chance to vote on the Minister of Magic, but we have no insight as to how that election works, and it doesn't seem like a fair process. The Ministry gets taken over by Death Eaters very quickly. In an established democracy, that is not something that should be able to happen. But it happens very quickly in Harry Potter. And then I don't know if you remember the trials in Harry Potter.
I remember the one where it's Ron, but he's in disguise.
Yes. That is one of the main trials that gives us insight onto how the trials work. There's also a trial of Barty Crouch Jr. that we see through flashbacks. And then there's also the trial of Buckbeak. I don't know if you remember that one.
Wait, Buckbeak goes on trial?
Yeah.
The Hippogriff?
The Hippogriff. He goes on trial. It's not a full like court case or anything, but it's a smaller scale. But we can talk about that a little bit later in the episode. So through these trials, we see that they do not have a fair democratic process at all. It's not anything like, it's just not a fair trial at all. Okay, moving on. This is the big one. Social equality in the wizarding world. What do you think about this?
Well, I do have a little bit of an opinion that it's absolutely terrible what they do to house elves.
Yes, it is terrible. If you guys don't know, the house elves serve as slaves, both in Hogwarts and just the wizarding world in general. So yes, you're correct. The wizarding world is very racist. Anyone else who isn't a human is discriminated against. You have your giants, you have your house elves, of course, you have your centaurs, and basically anyone who isn't a human. The muggles and squibs, although they're human, they are also perceived as like a lower class.
Yeah.
And squibs especially are treated very badly by the magical community. A lot of times in the pureblood families, like the Blacks, the Malfoys, if they would have a squib show up, they would essentially hide them away from the wizarding world. They'd like kick them out, hide them away, because it was shameful to have a squib in their family.
That's so sad.
Yeah. The reason that we have this in Harry Potter is because guess who wrote the books?
J.K. Rowling.
Yes. So this will transition us into the section where we talk about the reality of Harry Potter. Now, what are your opinions on J.K. Rowling?
Well, based on recent developments, my opinion of her has gone down.
Yes, as I'm sure everyone's has. But let's specifically focus on what she did with Harry Potter. So we have a few bullet points here that we'd like to go over. The first one is probably the biggest one. There's a lot of pro-slavery stuff in Harry Potter. This is specifically with the house elves. So if you remember in the novels, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they're all going through their own individual stuff. And Hermione finds out about the house elf slaves in Hogwarts, right? She knits them all sorts of things, like to set them free. She does a lot of work, like a lot of social work for the house elves. And J.K. Rowling treats this, because she wrote it, she treats this as just, oh, Hermione, what are you doing?
Oh, you can't solve this
come
problem.
On. What are you even trying? That is a huge issue. Huge issue. Nobody should be writing anything that's pro-slavery. Moving on, I don't want to spend too long on that topic.
Yeah.
Well, here's the next one. We have a lot of racial stereotypes in Harry Potter. We have the big one. The only Asian character, Cho Chang, who's a Ravenclaw.
There's just something about naming the only, did J.K. Rowling really go, what should I name this character who's Asian?
Did.
I know, Cho Chang.
There's a TikTok trend happening right now that I really like. It is a lot of people from different ethnicities being like, if I was cast as the Russian character in Harry Potter, if I was cast as the Southern American version in Harry Potter, and it's a lot of, it's them essentially making fun of J.K. Rowling and how she writes. Mm-hmm. Now, the other big one, the goblins at the bank. This one
Yikes.
is very problematic, and I don't think we really need to talk about it. Because everyone knows why this is bad.
Gosh, I
Very
wonder who they're kind of trying to symbolize.
I wonder... Okay, let's get on to more of the stuff about how she wrote the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, Harry Potter, it is a great story. However, it could be so much better. And one of the reasons I think it could be so much better is Hermione, yes, she's friends with Harry and Ron. However, J.K. Rowling really missed the opportunity to have Hermione be really good friends with other people in the story. Because she makes like glancing references to Hermione having friendships with other people, but she never explores them.
So you might have heard the sirens in the background. Really, really sorry about that. The building right outside my window apparently caught on fire, and we had to go check that out.
Yeah, but now we're back. Everything's okay, we think. So, let's continue. One of the other aspects that J.K. Rowling did not do well is there's a lot of animal cruelty in Harry Potter. So, for example, we talked about Buckbeak's trial earlier. Buckbeak is not given a fair trial at all. They basically go over the trial as fast as they can, and then they say, okay, we're just gonna kill him. And Harry and his friends have to rescue Buckbeak, even though Buckbeak did absolutely nothing wrong. Also, in Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament, they captured dragons, and they basically have them on chains in the schoolyard. That's animal cruelty. We don't like that at all.
Definitely.
I don't know if this counts as animal cruelty, but the unicorns in the forest that are killed by Voldemort / Quirrell, that's animal cruelty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would also say that having the dog Fluffy guarding the Sorcerer's Stone, I'd say that's animal cruelty because you lock him in a room and don't let him out.
That's
we don't like that.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah.
It's a good boy.
Very good boy. He just likes music. Music, and they just lock him in the room. Anyway, one of the other things that I don't really like about how J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter is it really makes no sense if you start to think about it. Like, there's so many inconsistencies. There's the whole thing about transfiguring things into other things. How does that work? She kind of explains the magic, but not in a realistic way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the whole, love is the most powerful magic, which, okay, whatever. We'll give her a pass on that one.
Yeah, that's kind of cute.
Yeah, one thing that I do have a gripe with her about, though, is how she tries to redeem Draco Malfoy. She doesn't completely do it. She kind of, waffles back and forth on whether or not he's good or not, but he is absolutely not good in any sense. He yells slurs at Hermione.
Yeah.
He's overall, he's a douche. He's a douche. We don't like him. I don't think Rowling should have tried to redeem him at all. But if she was going to, she should have committed to it.
Yeah.
And the last little bullet point I have on here that's very problematic is, you all remember Peter Pettigrew, right? Peter Pettigrew. He was Ron's pet rat for a while. And there is a passage in which Ron talks about sleeping with his pet rat.
Oh
which
my
is actually
gosh.
an adult man.
Gosh.
Yeah, I don't know if J.K. Rowling had known that when she was writing, but that's kind of a swing and a miss for her.
That's just gross.
Yeah. So now we've gone through all the in-universe, all the out-of-universe reasons why Harry Potter is awful. What do you think about all this information?
Well, I mean, it kind of makes you sad that such a big part of your childhood and everything actually sucks. And also, I realized this kind of recently, Hogwarts as a school name is super gross.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you've got the other schools with, such good names. You've got Ilvermorny in America. You've got Durmstrang, that's a cool name. And then you've got Beauxbatons. All really cool names. And then you have Hogwarts.
It's like pig pimples.
Exactly, it's disgusting. Anyway, so we've talked about all these terrible things about the wizarding world, about Hogwarts. I guess the only thing I have left to say is that if I got a letter for Hogwarts, I would completely disregard all of this and go anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow, rate, or whatever you do the podcast you like. Or not. I'm not your mommy. But it'd be really nice of you if you did. And you'll get a double thumbs up from me. As always, have a great day.